Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9. And of course, we're playing as Germany this series. And one little quick sort of comment question brought up by Super Salud. Hope I'm getting your screen name right. Was about doing reinforcements here as opposed to letting it go. And he totally agrees, and I get with the idea of keeping the upgrades, because if they stack up, they also take a long time. You can't just power through them by doubling or tripling the, the amount of ICs going to upgrades. Because some of the stuff, particularly like ship upgrades, they're just designed to take a long time. Reinforcements. I've been keeping this reasonably up to date to keep it full. It's probably not necessary to do so. You could probably let it get bad, and then once you're getting ready for the war, just plow into it as being, fulfill the upgrades. That probably is the smartest tactical thing to do. I just, a combination of don't want to see red here. And normally, if you keep this fairly current, it's often less than 5, and often for me it's like 3 or even less. So it's not a big deal either way, obviously. So that's half an IC that I could be building, and still that's half an IC that I could be building if it were, say, a steady state of 3 about that. So that's, not a lot, but still something. So keep that in mind. There are good reasons to do that. See, like now it's dropping down to just a 24. And Switzerland. Give them fuel for money, sure. We want more money. We're not doing too well. Now, Nick used to be Archie Bunker, if you saw him with a Vader image in the past. Long time commenter and watcher, viewer, whatever you want to say, of the channel. Has asked me to this series, before going into the Soviet Union, to invade Sweden and Switzerland and puppet them. Well, told him I would consider, and one of the sort of stronger arguments he has for puppeting Sweden is that you get an effect for the Baltic if you include, Stockholm, I guess, or maybe one of these, or maybe one of these other ports. And I don't think, and I've tried for the longest time, to get Sweden into the access through diplomatic means, trying to influence them. A long time ago, way back when I started, so it would probably be before Their Finest Hour came out, some guy made a mod, and I know I bookmarked it, but that was a computer, at least one older computer ago, and whether technically I don't even know if, he made a YouTube video of his playthrough as Nazi Sweden, but he made a mod, and I asked him for it a few times, and a copy of it, never got really a reply back through the forums, and I asked once on this thing if I could have a copy, and then he may have destroyed it, a copy of his mod that turns Sweden into a Nazi country. And he was Swedish. He even very much in his description playing the bad guys, because I remember him, because I did watch a couple of the episodes way back when, but I can't find it. I've tried to look around for the videos again. And he play the bad guys, and he just once Swedish and wants to play the bad guys, not that he wants to, you know, a Swedish Nazi. But there was a big Swedish Nazi movement going on, and I really haven't dug into it. I've got a bunch of bookmarks to images and such, and it was big. Again, when I say that it was big, it doesn't mean that it was the biggest party or almost ready to win political victory. It was just a significant political phenomenon. I don't right now. Obviously, they didn't take over. I really don't know how big of a one. But he went with this mod, and I saw some of it. He really looked at, and a few events started before 36, sort of, sort of like prequel. They fired at the very beginning. That there was, I don't know, some riot or a couple of things that he was supposing, had they gone sort of different, sort of an alt history thing. And then, the Swedish government, and then up from 36 on through, made a few different choices that you could make while playing this mod that would turn Sweden into a National Socialist country. And I really would love to get a hold of that, but that may not be doable. But more than a year ago, I went and I tried to thought I could find the bookmarks, and no, I couldn't, and tried to do a YouTube search, and who knows, the videos may have even been removed. So if anybody of you happens to be bored and want to look it up, I was going to try to do screen grabs or something of the event, as the events popped up, to at least get what his events look like, and I'll do my own work and build the mods. But he was sort of basing off of real historical events and conditions, with a needing an alt version at some stages. I sort of wanted to look at it to see how plausible his sort of alt decisions would have been. But to have Sweden as an option to go National Socialist, and with the general thought at the time to make it a highly unlikely but a possible AI, the idea that the historical outcomes would be 80-90% likely, and the non-historical outcomes would be obviously the other percent. So maybe once in a blue moon you'd end up having a National Socialist Sweden wanting to join the Axis. So I haven't been able to do it peacefully, even with every country surrounded, including getting England. So maybe we'll see about invading Sweden and puppeting it. One of the reasons because we can get the sort of Swedish steel effects without controlling Sweden, and there's some resources and obviously some ICs, but if we were to invade them and conquer them and occupy them, particularly occupy them, we would have to obviously occupy them, have a bunch of troops there. So benefit versus gain, I've always been sort of leery about if it would really help. Controlling Norway, yeah, you get you get operational bases. You'll notice I'll move like ships dash from here to here, then send them out, from this up to here, and then send them out, trying to get around like they did historically. So there's reasons, and then obviously since we can get allies with Finland coming in and attacking up in the north here, so there's good strategic reasons to go after Norway. There's good strategic reasons not to go after Norway. Just like, hey, if it isn't going to be in the war, why we need to put all that energy and effort? And we're going to see in this mod with garrison units and building fortifications that it's going to be expensive to garrison up Norway. If we truly believe that neither side would touch it, there might be a good reason, strategically not to. So, but if we puppet Sweden, and if we can still get the positive effects of Sweden, like the Swedish steel effect coming through Narvik, controlling that up there in the Axis, and by simply having Sweden in the Axis, so those ports are, there, and when we get some of these other areas, get the Baltic, or whatever, modifiers, that would be a good thing. So I'm considering that. Not a done deal, not sure where I'm going to try to plug that in. That could happen. Now, on Switzerland, I will not, because I'm playing National Socialist Germany as opposed to fantasy Germany. You can decide to play a fantasy Germany. That's fine. I'm playing National Socialist Germany. Hitler would not have invaded Switzerland and puppeted it. He wanted all National Socialist, or all Germans, or a core tenet, how do I say this? A core tenet of National Socialism under Hitler was that all Germans would be as part of the Reich, under one government. None were going to live under other governments. That doesn't mean you're not going to get some, some community living in Venezuela that's German. No, it's just all real sort of populations of Germans in the world, in this part of the world. We're going to be part of Germany. Again, as I said in an earlier episode, because of that thought and a few other things, really makes me think that David Frankfurter saved Switzerland by killing Wilhelm Gustloff as early as he did. Because I think Gustloff was the man to spearhead the movement to get the German Swiss to be allied, and would have constantly been, because he was a German-Swiss dual citizenship guy, he would have constantly been talking into Hitler and other high-ups' ears. We've got to do something about Switzerland. We've got to free the Swiss Germans. We've got to free the Swiss Germans and reunite them with the Reich. And all that would have been going on, and at some point, before, after the fall of France, or I don't know, at some point, I think they would have gone in. Whether the Swiss, talked to a couple of Swiss about it. One guy says, well, one of my grandfathers lived sort of, out in the farm plains out here. He probably just would have, most likely get occupied, better just to sort of, get along to survive. Another, my grandfathers lived sort of in a mountainous region. He would have fought. He would have been one of the, because this one guy, he had book Total War. We both enjoyed it. It's a sort of a Swiss manual on guerrilla warfare. We had both read it, and so my other grandfather, he would have been one of the resistors, and putting up and they were both German-speaking Swiss men alive during the time. At least this was his post-war, I think post their death, assessment of knowing them. So some would have, German Swiss would have fought and resisted post and this is more than just the idea of the army. You do what you're drafted in the army. You do what you're told to until you sort of give up. Your units give up fighting, whether that's a national surrender or unit by unit, being defeated. But he thought one of his grandfathers would have been in the resistance. So Hitler, if he's going to invade Switzerland, the German-speaking peoples are going to be part of the Reich. With TRE, and particularly if Mussolini has made the right decisions, a couple of these provinces here, not Davos. Davos looks like it should go Swiss, but Davos was actually the head of, or the main sort of German Nazis in Switzerland, as opposed to Swiss Nazis in Switzerland. There is a distinction, and we'll get into a little of that some more later on. But so it's a very German-speaking area. But mainly these two provinces that basically for this game offer nothing, meaning no manpower, no resources, no nothing, but gain cores on it maybe. It doesn't look like so yet, but this is too early for them to have gained cores. So if we go in, we're going to go in, and we may go in, and the reason I may go in, as I think I said in another episode, is, the AI wants to fully garrison this border with, 6 units per province, make sure the Swiss don't break out and attack anybody. So we may do that too. Steel casting has improved. I just wanted to do that to get that up to this level, because I think maybe here or somewhere or something, I kind of vaguely remember that needed to be up. But it was a quick, easy earlier than 1936 tech, so I just took it at the time. Now I think we're good enough that we don't need to keep pushing. This needs to get to at war, or fine-tunes industry, or steel construction at least 6, and we're not at 6 yet. So, well, we're Okay, we're over invested anyway, so let's continue. So we might be doing Switzerland, we might be doing Sweden. No promises either way, but if we're going into Switzerland, it will be to occupy. If we go into Sweden, oh, cool, we got some British blueprints. Mein Führer, our supplies have stolen plans to let us improve our abilities in CAG torpedo bomber focus to level 1, giving us the following benefits. Okay. So, that is it? No, carrier. Yeah, it's here. Okay, so we couldn't even research that yet because we haven't got air-launched torpedoes yet under bombs, which we will soon, but we've already stolen how to do that. So now we are level 1s in each of these. If we build, actually complete out the Graf Zeppelin, the aircraft carrier version of it, as opposed to the Zeppelin version of it, we will need some CAGs, and that will help. Still mostly at peace, though. I've noticed this. I wondered if these gotten any further, but not yet. Okay, what technologies have we reached? Okay, defensive positions. That here. Mostly, it seems like it affects some garrison and that type of stuff. But hey, it helps. Well, mentioning before bomb types and these, so we will do air-launched torpedoes. Of course, we always do these because flying boats and nav air, we want to attack the sea better. Because we hate Neptune. No. We hate Poseidon. No, I don't know. Who do we hate? Who was the German god of the sea? In Minors, and I figure it's you know, most of the German gods are just Woden is sort of Odin, if I'm understanding all that correctly. So that they're basically the different pronunciations of the same thing. But Neptune and Poseidon are actually two different gods. Poseidon is the ancient, and when I say ancient, Poseidon and his trident goes back well pre-Greek. Goes back to here and some of these others, and I'm calling them pre-Greek because they're the what we vaguely call the ancient Minoan type cultures. As opposed to the Mycenaean cultures, which are sort of the mainland and sort of rose up after the collapse of the, you know, you can sort of say it Mycenaean Greek, but I'm sort of saying these sort of pre-Greco type, you know, the people morphed or whatever, but into Greeks as we sort of understand it, but this pre-culture that they found, you know, you have this period of, you know, the, probably most all of you know the palace, or maybe it's a temple complex. There's been some modern thinking here on like Knossos on Crete that was found right around this period of time leading up to World War II. But now they found more large, and some of the stuff has just been, since the Middle Ages or something, have just been mistakenly thought of as, you know, something must be old Roman type stuff. But on some of these other islands here, but really ancient, you know, sort of Stone Age, but huge mega structures. I mean, like, and still existing, like 6-story tall type buildings built out of stone, but big, huge, thick things. And they've even found what was, think out here in the Azores. Yeah, that's right. Out in the Azores, a bunch of structures that when when man first discovered these islands out here, a lot of them were sort of overgrown and they didn't recognize them. And so when the first man was walking out here, they sort of discovered and sort of dismissed some of these structures out here. And so either they were aliens, or obviously humans had discovered it and had lived out here. And they can look at some boat anchors that they've been recently finding, and that from here all the way back into here, and you know, the Isle of Thera, and also, of course, living on some of the, you know, the other islands, and closely there was this huge sort of multi island sort of community that had similar building styles, though no, not necessarily the same. So they think there is some different political stuff, but the sort of thing that may all represent what Atlantis was. You know, so some of these people searching for Atlantis, it's either on land, you know, but got sort of submerged and then refilled in here, or just off the coast here, or it's, you know, the Thera let's say Saint Helena. I know it's the island volcano that blew up was that, which then it was, or this was all you know, Atlantis, or was it some other deep down, and when the Mediterranean, because there is enough evidence now that the Mediterranean was sort of 2 or 3 or 4 inland seas that were sort of, you know, somewhat salty, that, you know, that but fed into by rivers, and then at one point but was much lower than sea level, but then this sort of broke and then flooded in. Some people were saying that's Atlantis, but that's super old. And a more recent one, which maybe that one, but the one I think is sort of the Noah myth, is that the whole world, see, I called it the Noah myth. I think that there really was, whether they called Noah or something, I really think there was a guy who had a large boat and who put a bunch of animals on it. Not necessarily an ark, you know, the sizes. I know they built some big wooden structure or something in Florida, I think, in America, that's supposedly life size. Go ask how you get all the animals in the world onto that, and go ask one of the, you know, and they're like presenting this. Look, maybe Christians wouldn't consider me a Christian. Okay, I get that, but I consider myself a Christian. But these people that want to take this literally, that Noah, and okay, so he had all the animals come 2 by 2 onto the ark. So how big is the ark to get all of the animals? And how did all of the animals that are only found in Australia, you know, like kangaroos, you know, pouches, animals with, you know, pouches young and kind of stuff that are in multiple species, that probably had to spring and separate out, isolated here in Australia. How did they all get up to, you know, here somewhere in this part of the world and get onto an ark? And then after the flood, how did they all get back to here? Okay, that's one sort of question and solution, or, you know, how so. And then you go, well, God just made it happen. Or, okay, my next question is if the entire earth was covered by the sea for a while, what happened to all of the fish? They'd die. Well, why would the fish die? All of the freshwater fish would die in saltwater. Or if it happened to be freshwater, all of the saltwater fish would die. So what happened to all of the fish? Why didn't they all die? Oh, well, God made them be able to survive it. So why the hell God just didn't make these guys to breathe underwater for a few weeks? You know, if God can, you know, if you're going to go magical, you know, just magical do things, and I know this isn't maybe the place to And I'm not talking, well, obviously this is someone's belief. And whether you believe this is real. This is not whether you believe God is real. And please don't start, oh, God isn't, no, don't comment. I'm not talking whether God is real. I'm talking about the idea that, God, well, I've had discussions with family members, sorry. I don't believe God actually writes a book. Okay? Humans write a book. Now, whether God is really whispering in their ear while they're writing the book, they're still writing the book, or whatever it is. So I don't trust the book, that this ancient book that is so old that aren't inaccuracies in it. Okay? That's my point. Not whether you believe in God or not, or whether you believe in Jesus or not, or Muhammad or not, or Moses or not. I think all three of those guys are real historical figures. They really existed, including I really do believe Moses existed. I don't know that everything that was attributed to all three of those things, all three of those people, are true. But those are all in recordable sort of history time period. I'm talking back Noah and the ark and a world flood. So I don't believe that happened. But I do believe there was a flood that destroyed a world. What? Okay. So we've gotten past the idea of if you're not going to do super magic things to either shrink down elephants and other species to get on board an ark, or how are you going to build a wooden ark truly big enough to hold all the species or whatever. We get past all of that and go, okay, well, they have found in some of the areas of the Red Sea, oh no, sorry, not the Red Sea, the Black Sea, camp is the wrong term, dwellings that are along what had been the coast, and they're preserved because this is a multi-layer sea that or that had been fed for a long time by rivers, like it still sort of is, but it was lower than sea level, and eventually coming through here, this breaks through and floods in. So this then puts a different level of water on top of it that's more ocean salty and different. So it sort of creates this, I don't know if dead is quite the right term, probably some of you know a lot better, but there's sort of two different water levels that don't mix, that sort of sit on top of each other. One sits on top of the other one, obviously. And so it sort of protects. And so a lot of, they've been finding Roman era and other era shipwrecks that go down. And the wood is mostly where, if it happened out, in the Aegean, the wood's gone. If it's Roman era, the wood is just gone. It's been, or at least sometimes maybe something might get buried up and up. But mostly it's just the little animals attack it. So, they're finding the amphora and some of the other, items on board the ship that survived this long. But it's just gone. Where they're actually finding the ships in the right conditions off the Turkish coast. Well, they're also finding what had been like coastal communities, and they can, trace out where the, fence, what's remaining. It's not all there. It's not like you can walk into a house, but it's, stubs of fence posts, where they, put stone around for a pit fire. So I really take it that that people are remembering a flood, and because people like to live along coastlines, that probably just happened, and it was a traumatic effect, and I don't know, many people, don't know what the population level was, but many people along the coast of the Black Sea died in a major flood. There's also some other stuff of a sea level floods changing, coming in into the Persian Gulf as well, that they're finding evidence for, of man living along a significantly lower coast level line that I think may be dealing with the shrinking of an ice, some of this ice age that was coming down into some of these parts when there was man there. And so and then much earlier than both of those, when I started talking, there's the flooding of the Mediterranean. But I think that the dates, and I forget what they were, but were so super long ago that they're not remembering the flooding of the Mediterranean. I think they're conflating the two sort of flood stories, and whether there was a Noah, and whether God did or didn't talk to him, I don't know. which could be involved in either one or both of the, conflating two things, or maybe it happened twice, two different guys named Noah, and whether he put animals on a boat or not and survived through the flood, I don't know, but that's where I think these stories come from. So I'm not dismissing the idea that there was a Noah and that he saved his family and his animals and had all of the animals, the speaker of the time period, wasn't worried about, I don't know, other animals. He was worried about the animals on the farm, if you will, because that's what was important to them. Saved all those animals and saved his family and whatever, and then found, eventually after whatever, found land and settled on it and continued. But that's a localized thing, and I sort of tend to believe that happened to some degree. Not word for word or anything, but that kind of thing happened. So I guess you're finding a little bit about me of some of the stuff that I sort of believe. Again, whether you want to believe that it was God talking to him or not, or whether he somehow saw some of the water kind of things rising or early precursor events and going, maybe I should, have a dream at night. And, his subconscious talking to him. And he decides to build a big boat. Whether, maybe it was God, maybe it was just him. I don't know. We can, if you want to, I'm not going to, like I say, we're not going to have the theosophical type debate on that here, but whatever. And again, I'm not telling you what I believe. I'm just saying I believe the idea that these stories have a basis in truth somewhere, and I'm personally looking at that. But so we get to the idea here that where was I going with this? Sorry. Okay, well, we're going to continue on. I'm quite honestly lost, because I know we were talking about the Atlantean. Oh, sorry, yes. Back to the various myths and Poseidon. That's where we were. So Poseidon goes back to well before the Thera volcano, well before the Thera volcano going up, before the sort of full pantheon of Greek gods. So Poseidon is one of the ancient of the gods that become the Greek gods. Neptune is the Roman god of the seas, and the Romans like to go, oh, well, our Neptune is the same as your Poseidon, or our Proteus. I think Proteus is the Celtic god of the seas. I think it's Proteus. Is the Celtic god of the seas, in which I'm probably mispronouncing it. Which the Selkies, the seals, are his sort of messenger, and oh, that's the same as our Neptune. That was sort of the Romans trying to always finding the local equivalents and saying they're the same god. Now, there's another old ancient type belief, is that no, Proteus was the god of the seas up in somewhere in here. Neptune was the god of the seas in this area, and Poseidon was the god of the seas in this area. You can go either sorts of ways, or only the Celtic gods existed and none of the other gods existed. The other gods are all just false. That's also another ancient sort of, my understanding sort of belief is. So I don't know the Roman, or not the Norse sea god. I'm sure they presumably, because they were going all over the sea, they got to have one, but I just can't remember it. Okay, sorry about that diversion into mythology, because yes, I think the gods are myths. Okay, artillery unit, combined arms. Okay, yes, 38 is too far in advance. And we now freeze up a little bit more, so we're going to do mobile unit training and control. Get that all done. Come for Hearts of Iron, get a lecture on ancient sea gods and ancient sea events in the Mediterranean region. I know, well, modest amount of people. And, well, some fairly highly educated people. One, if I theoretically, you could probably figure out who she is if I told you what was her job. She's well retired from it now, of an aunt of mine. I mean, not famous, but head of a major city library department. You know, the head of the entire library system. Not just head of a library or head of a, you know, of a building, but the whole system of a major U.S. city. That's good enough. And others were, another one was or until he retired, was a teacher, professor a bit, you know, educator through his careers in teaching in college and high school and that kind of stuff. So fairly well educated. And he and I, their aunt, we do talk about once in a while, but a lot of my family isn't all this interested in this stuff. Now, if I wanted to talk old cars with my parents, you know, cars from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, man, they'd love to talk to me all day long about that. So yeah, this is sort of an outlet for me. You know, it's no people, but too much of a history nerd for most of the people that I know. Okay, yeah, and so being educated doesn't necessarily, you know, and well informed about things doesn't necessarily mean that we have common interests. Okay, gun position, twin engine airplanes we've stolen from the British to level 2. And this is we're doing mostly for fun. We couldn't even research it yet, or I don't think, and hadn't done any. So we jumped not just to level 1, we've jumped to level 2. For our stuff. So we're doing pretty well as stealing from the British right now. We are also trying to steal from America, I believe, but they probably just don't have anything of interest to us at the moment. The only other people I really think we could try to steal from that would have, because obviously we're already plowing into 1937 technology, might be Japan if they're doing some naval stuff, but I've learned that it's just. And as you can see here, we are, well, putting, you know, 2 in it. But part of that, you got to put some, unless you just want to get rampaged by everybody else's stealing your technology. And again, I don't mind if it's like Italy stealing my technology. Go ahead. You're going to end up being my ally. You can take all the technology you want from me. And, of course, they can, you know, try to disrupt my national unity and other sorts of things. So you do want to keep spies fully. I'm not and there's a bunch of people, and I think they're still, because we haven't had them active, but maybe they're almost all gone now. Oh, there's still like a spy in Paraguay or whatever that we get there at start. I'm not this is like the last one. I'm not an intelligence player. There's a whole sort of game you can play here. I've just never found it terribly useful. Though it can be helped, especially if you're trying to do some stuff, like if you want to support our party to help take over the Netherlands, or you want to, if you see that Italy is having, you know, having trouble, you could support the ruling party, so it makes, sorry about that. You know, you could help them out or something like that. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with spies. I just don't naturally do that really well. And so I very much want to say it's something you can do and can be useful. I just don't find it useful in my play style. And maybe I'm missing something. And the biggest thing, you know, other than, but I do want to say is you want to keep your a lot of counter spies, your things fully up and going, and it is also very good to support your ruling party to try to help keep it, you know, in the majority as much as possible. So there is uses, and so we're not. And so at least one level of spy, you know, one leadership of spies I would be doing myself. So adding one more isn't really wasting leadership that much. Not just, it might not be the most efficient. Yes, we'll give them fuel, but then we'll give them energy. We do have a fair amount extra here. Okay, okay, we're going to change this up a bit now. So, annual espionage focus. We're going to again do economic spying. It's been nerfed down since when it was originally set up. It would really help that. Annual national focus. We're going to do Reich economics again. We're going to examine our factories as the best. Now, this time, if you notice, we're getting 3 and 3 for things. So, really helps out. And this time we're going to also do something different. We're going to do long-term investment. You should do long-term investment now, because we have spent a good chunk of this last year doing giant infrastructure projects. So we want to get one of those. And I think it'll come up pretty quick. If you have selected short term, you won't get those. So we want to do more. So this actually cuts down, not just neutral, but actually cuts down the level of ICs we have. And that is why you don't want to do it at first, because you want to, because you're not going to get the thing and... Oh, stop. Show trials in Moscow, national recruiting policy not selected. That's what I was trying to avoid. I prefer the balanced approach. Yes. Okay, we'll get that negative thing removed shortly. Okay, IG Farben plant. The IG Farben plant at Ludwigshafen used large amounts of coal to produce various synthetic materials, including oil. Should we build this facility? Okay, we can build the plant. This is again a TRE event. Or not build the plant if you don't want to. Okay, but right now, energy, obviously we have a lot, and we are doing a surplus, but again, you have to cost a lot to go through TRE. Supplies, just a little bit here, but we've got a good basis for them. And metal, yeah, we're doing all right there. We built that up some more. And manpower, 1, who cares? For a rares extraction, and this is how I help set or simulate that. You get a rares extraction, so it gain a crude oil, and you gain a rare material in that province. So that will help out for oil and the rare materials. Sometimes rare materials really do mean things like tungsten and aluminum. Sometimes they mean things like machine oils or nylon or other synthetic types of things. So yes, we want to do that. Event originally given by George, 1941. Das Schwarzkopf Corps. I'm butchering that. The Black Corps. Sorry, I know what it means. First edition of Das Schwarzkopf appeared on the 6th of March, 1935, with 70,000 copies in print. This is basically the newspaper for the SS. Interesting. So, okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll do this one. We're gonna skip a bunch, but we're gonna do some of those guys. Okay, and yes. Okay, yeah, we've lost. Just, you have to read this always carefully. We've lost these negative effects because I didn't click quick enough. And manpower returned back to the pool. Do remember, we're still going to get 300 plus back in, what is it, 38, 39? I forget, but... Okay, now we have a reasonably good basis of supply. Not huge, but reasonably good. So what we're going to do is we're still going to overproduce because we still need a lot more. But I don't think we need to overproduce more. And obviously we can always, you know, ram the needs thing to one extreme or the other. But this will mean more factories available to build. Let's check. I see now here we've gone over the maximum. You know that is. Oh no, we're just building up to 9. I thought it increased. But there's a lot more of these for sure. Just checking to make sure all of these have something that's in production. You want to target these. We've been having a few one at a time coming out. Okay, so let's just build some here in the east, far away from Allied bombing, so much closer to Soviet invasion, if they think of doing such a thing. Okay, now we're going to again come here and push all these guys to the bottom. As I click very fast. Slow up. There we go. And now we're down to 5.53, 5.5. Now those are new. These will get adjusted once something is built up to that, though, once they get built. So that's sort of the current adjusted. These are the unadjusted. Practicals change, so they're building cheaper, and more of them are building more of them. So we are business boost negative. Okay, we will no longer receive that money for the energy. Okay. Die Kraftfahr Kampftroop. Motorized combat troops. A monthly magazine on military motorized units was published for the Oberkommando des Heers for distribution to military units. Articles and features in the magazine including 25 years of tanks, motorcycles with sidecars, or lightweight trucks. That's what some of these things are. Broaches the concept of Volkswagen Kübelwagen or Jeep type vehicles. Armed Forces Wehrmacht Motor Sports, off-roading, etc. You can see some of the ads, and obviously you can't really read, but you can see like some of the photos and what one of the magazine looks like. We're going to see this morphs eventually into a different magazine in next year or the year after. But I look at this as a method of distributing out the doctrines that either directly or indirectly are being worked on by Guderian and being, you know, tested out and practiced. And like I've talked about how it's not just either one guy writing a book or not just our manual or something, or one team getting out and practicing this stuff. That's sort of what they're doing here. There's photos and they're getting out and doing exercises and practicing and figuring out how it works. But then they're trying to disseminate it out to the other fields. So even if you're an artillery officer or you're an engineering officer of a foot division, you can at least learn a little bit more about stuff. But again, all these little bonuses, they aren't going to trip you over into a new level of these unless you're actively researching some of these other things. So if one of these is almost done, it'll trip you over, or it'll just sort of boost you up a little bit. Okay, we are losing way too much, so I was hoping it just naturally people would go, hey, I want to trade with you. No, okay. So, sell to America supplies. They can stockpile them. There we go, positive at least. We'll try to do another bunch of them. Now, also, what earlier I talked about invading Switzerland, I think will go away. I say I think so because I haven't, at least I don't think I have ever dug into the actual code of the events, and I'm just sort of presuming, and I haven't actually tested it, that if we invade Switzerland, the Bank of International Settlement effect goes away. I think so. I presume so, but I may be wrong. Maybe that's just something there. Okay, direct fire unit. Advanced. There we go. Let's come over to recon unit. Everybody gets a recon unit of any sort of usefulness division. Obviously these guys don't, but hey, they're just going to either sit here or sit on a port somewhere. Okay, the Paris exposition preparations. We talked about it before, but this is the big sort of multi-country type, huge, massive fair set up in Paris. We're going to build this really, I actually think it's sort of cool, big pavilion. Speer designs it. Now remember, Speer at this time, he's not in charge of armaments industry at all. He's just Hitler's sort of favorite architect, who maybe at this point has the title Reich architect. But he isn't anything even like Todt, who at this time is been building the Autobahns and starting to build the West Wall. This earlier stuff, because often you talk, some of the stuff is actually predates the Nazis or very early. Those are well before Todt is involved in some of those defensive things. But West Wall is really my understanding of where he starts in the defensive construction works. And Todt, with Organization Todt, is also involved in other construction projects for the Nazis. Speer is just sort of starting out in some of that elements and starting out very much as a architect for Hitler. That then he sort of gets put in charge of a few actual building projects, and I'm not just talking like redoing or whatever the Brown House in Munich, sort of that, but I'm sort of major projects, and shows that he has the leadership on site and everything else to get the stuff going. So we can boycott it since we know the Soviets are going to be there, or we can go. We're going to go. It's useful to go. It costs a bit, but it's useful. We will give them money for crude oil. No, we're going to steal all your crude oil later. Okay, we'll get your crude oil, which is too far away to go steal. Aren't you happy about that? Okay, we're going to take this opportunity to end this episode. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for liking the events. I really do appreciate it. And would you please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas. I love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.